The first thing I felt was the floor trembling through my boots, a low, hungry growl working its way up the steel bones of the hangar until it rattled my teeth. I was in a pressure suit with my helmet unlatched, palms sweating inside my gloves, and right in front of me a Roblox noob in a bright yellow shirt was trying to fist bump the liquid oxygen tank. "Please don't," I said, a little too kindly for the situation. "Noob wants luck," he chirped. "First moon trip. Big boom fun." "Not that kind of fun," I said, and yanked his hand back before anyone noticed. To my left, Chef, apron, Chef's hat tilted like it had been photoshopped onto reality, was calibrating our food printer with the seriousness of a surgeon. To my right, Aya adjusted my chest rig, her eyes doing that fast flicker she gets when she's syncing a dozen systems at once. Aya is real, very, brilliant, painfully, and the only reason the Roblox crossover project hadn't exploded half of Poland. Above us, on a screen the size of a cinema, the launch timeline marched in bold white text. T02:58. The first 3 minutes were always the hardest, every second full of ways to abort, delay, or panic. I could hear the voice of mission comms in my ear, smooth as glass. "Lunar Flight 1, we are green across the board. Repeat, green." A tall figure in a charcoal suit appeared at the edge of my vision, face made of black, glowing brackets. Sentinel. Not a person, not exactly an NPC, but Roblox AI stitched to the real world through the update we still call the merge. He stood so close to the bulkhead that the light bent around him, like his geometry refused to obey ours. "You brought him," I whispered to Aya. "He brought himself," she said. "He claimed mission-critical oversight authorization from Builderman. I tried to revoke, and the system laughed at me." Sentinel didn't speak with a mouth so much as he arranged the air. Trajectory window optimal. Human fear indices elevated. Noob's enthusiasm compensatory. "I'm not afraid," I lied. Noob squeezed my arm. "I am, but in a good way." T02:11. The gantry outside crawled back like a mechanical centipede. The rocket, our rocket, looked like a sleek milk-white pencil sharpened by a god. The entire lower stage was printed with a crosshatch pattern that caught the floodlights, so the cylinder seemed to ripple. The Roblox updates had given us voxel shard alloys and mesh compression techniques that made hardware go from blueprint to hangar in days. Everyone called it magic. It wasn't. It was his math, their math, in our hands. "Suit integrity?" Aya asked. "Green." I locked my helmet. The world narrowed to a ring of sound and a rectangle of vision fringed by my visor. Chef raised a spatula like a priest raises a candle. "Bon voyage." I loaded emergency spaghetti just in case. "Emergency spaghetti?" I said. "You will know the moment," Chef replied, as if quoting an ancient text. T01:00. The hangar doors parted. Outside night. A cold, Polish night with a sharp moon low like a coin flicked into the sky and forgotten. It looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe that was the point. Make the impossible look reachable. Mission comms. Crew to elevator. "It's time." We rode up in silence, except for Noob humming the OOF sound stretched into something weirdly inspirational. Sentinel's brackets flared a deep maroon. I tried not to think of Apocrypha about him. How he'd stared down a city traffic system and made it kneel. How kids in the merge zone swore he could freeze your phone screen with a look. At the hatch, the rocket skin felt warm through my gloves, like a big animal. Aya went first, then Noob, then Chef with a dignified hop, and finally Sentinel, who didn't climb so much as he translated from one coordinate to another and then pretended he'd climbed. I stepped through the circular door and felt the ship accept us, each of our weight signatures lighting up on a panel. Our shuttle's name was Jackdaw because it stole shiny things from fiction and physics and made them its own. T00:20. Straps. Harness click. Heart at hummingbird speed. Aya's voice, calm. "We are go for ignition." Sentinel. Recommend suppression of jitters. Human microtremors can desynchronize control input. "Recommend you be nice," I muttered. He rotated his brackets. Logged. T00:10. I inhaled. The cabin smelled like linen and metal, like a hospital stole a factory's perfume. Noob squeezed both my hands, which was medically questionable in a launch chair, but emotionally perfect. 5, Comm said. 4. I thought about how this started. A test in a gymnasium, a cardboard portal frame, sprites bleeding into the edges of reality, kids laughing as an obby staircase grew out of a climbing wall. Then the second update, physics handshakes, mass allowances, permissions. Then the third, the merge, where the border between our textures and theirs became an agreement instead of a barrier. Then the fourth, audacity. Someone asked, loud enough for the universe to hear, what if we go? 3, said comms. 2, ignition. The floor fell away and exploded upwards in the same breath. The crush pinned me to the seat. The rocket was a tower of fury, a white squall punching a tunnel through night. I felt my jaw vibrate. Aya counted out under her breath, an engineer's prayer. Noob screamed, delighted. Chef said, spaghetti and T+10 if we are not dead. Sentinel said nothing, but his brackets strobed a calm, algorithmic blue. We passed through cloud like a fist through paper. The world flattened into gradients. Black above, burning orange below. The cabin shook like it hated us. For a moment, instruments jittered, just long enough to taste fear. Sentinel's brackets flashed red. Anomalous packet detected. What packet? Aya said, never looking away from her screens. Language tag, urban myth server, he replied. A souvenir fragment from a previous event kept in your personal storage. It is attempting to run. I remembered the night my apartment became an urban myth lobby, how I'd saved a tiny glitched file labeled "Dunderfound under for a click." Zip, because I'm a human and we hoard our ghosts. I'd forgotten it existed. My heart tried to push through my ribs. Quarantine, I said. Too late, Sentinel answered, almost gently. A shimmer ran through the cabin wall like heat over asphalt, and for a split second I saw a reflection that wasn't mine. My helmet visor showed my face, then a second face behind it, me in block form with bracket eyes glowing. Then it blinked out, the rocket smoothed, and the instruments snapped back to polite green. Stage separation, Aya said, as if we hadn't just been haunted. The first stage fell away like we dropped a weight we'd gotten used to. The second stage took over with a clean shove. The sound thinned into a howl. I forced my breath into a rhythm. We were going. In the first 3 minutes, the rocket is honest with you. After that, it can lie in stable arcs. We'd made it through the honesty. Noob floated against his straps, eyes huge. We actually did it, he whispered, then louder, because whispering felt rude and a miracle. We actually did it. We drifted into the band of night that isn't quite space yet, but isn't Earth either, that bruised blue where the stars begin to forget they're shy. Below us, the continents had the lazy confidence of sleeping giants. Where Poland should have been, a thin ribbon of light traced the rivers like glowing veins. Prepare for orbit insertion burn, Aya said. Her voice did not shake. She keeps a tiny rubber duck in her pocket. She squeezed it once. The squeak was obscene and comforting. Before we do, Chef said solemnly, I motioned to serve the first ever zero-G meatball. He popped the lid on a silver sphere, and out drifted a perfect orb of spaghetti, sauce clinging like sunrise. Noob made a grab. The meatball juked like a seasoned athlete. It bounced off Sentinel, who didn't move. The sauce left a smear on his brackets, which somehow made me like him more. Focus, I said, but she smiled. 10 seconds to burn. The engine lit again, a gentler push this time, less thunder and more insistence. When it cut off, we were a bead on a thread around Earth. And in front of us, like a thought someone forgot to finish, hung the moon. Not enormous, not tiny, just there, a face you'd seen 1,000 times on stamps and screens, finally stepping into your kitchen. Transfer burn in 20, comms said. You are go for TLI? Translunar injection, Noob recited. Like vaccine for boring. Exactly, I said, and we burned, and the thread we were on became a sling, and then we were flung. In the days after the merge, people joked about building an obby staircase to the moon, 1 step per day until we could hop across like kids dodging puddles. We didn't. We built this. But it still felt like stairs, one invisible step after another, the ship counting and stepping and counting again. We coasted. Earth rotated below, then beside, then behind, then not at all, just a blue marble with white scars. Inside, time melted into chores, checks, those little rituals you invent in claustrophobia, so your mind has handrails. Chef wrote a recipe on a sticky note. Space toast, ingredients, heat, bread, bravery. Noob tried to teach me an emote. My suit made me look like a marionette coached by a raccoon. Sentinel watched the stars like he owned stock. Halfway there, the anomaly came back. It started with a scrap of fog in the avionics bay. Fog. In a sealed environment. That's like seeing rain inside a math equation. Aya and I opened the panel, and a cold breath spilled out, smelling like basement concrete. Urban myth residue, Sentinel said. Residual what? I asked, because humans like words that make our fear smaller. A story that refuses to die, he said. The lights flickered once. When they came back, the panels had acquired a second layer of UI, the crisp, candy-colored rectangles of Roblox. A mission prompt popped up on Aya's console. Find the 3 keys to open the lunar door. Noob vibrated like a tuning fork. Side quest. This is our primary, Aya snapped. We do not have a door. There better not be a door. As if the universe took orders from sarcasm, a hatch that hadn't been there a second ago pulsed on the far wall. It wasn't exactly physical. It was the idea of a door insisting so hard it bullied atoms into participating. The words unrated experience, crawled across it, then flickered to unrated experience, pending. I hate when metaphysics is punctual, I said. Keys, Sentinel said. His brackets went sharp. Rules have weight during the merge. If the system believes in keys, keys exist. We must find them. Quickly. How? Aya demanded. Like this, Noob said, and pointed as 3 tiny objects drifted from behind our equipment racks. A tea bag, a spare key from my apartment, a folded letter. I knew exactly where those came from. They were inventory items from the day my kitchen had become a Roblox hub. Tea, spare key, letter. The day Aya found me staring into the fridge like it was a portal, it was. They followed us, I whispered. Stories do, Sentinel said. We grabbed them. They made a comforting clink when I clipped them to my chest. The moment the last one clicked, the phantom hatch pulsed and split like a pupil dilating, not open but ready. The cabin dimmed, the outside view sharpened. The moon swelled. The door text changed to, Lunar door, accepting. Approach. Comms said, unaware our ship now had feelings. Begin PDI in 2 minutes. Powered descent initiation. The point of no graceful return. Our lander, Little Daw, separated with a thump we felt in our blood. Aya took primary controls. I took secondary. Noob had a camera and the absolute confidence of someone who'd never landed anything heavier than himself. Chef secured the payload. Sentinel hummed a probability I could almost hear. We dropped. The moon rushed up with terrible authority. The gray wasn't gray at all. It was 1,000 microcolors your brain files under gray because it can't handle the nuance. The craters were cups. The ridges were scars. The sun had no atmosphere to play with, so the shadows were knives. Altitude 300 meters, Aya said. Velocity still too much. I breathed. The lander coughed, corrected, slid sideways. Dust plumed in slow, sinuous ghosts. I'd seen this in training 100 times. It had never once felt like a place where ghosts would care. 200, I said. 90, 70, 50. Noob, we are mooning. Please never say that again, Aya said. 30. 10. We kissed the surface more than landed on it. A soft bump, and then a shiver as the struts accepted a whole new kind of weight. Silence. The kind of silence that is not empty but full, of distance, of light, of the thin dust settling on the ancestral loneliness of a rock that had watched oceans form and thought, Lunar Flight 1. Comms said, and I could hear the held breath back on Earth. Telemetry shows you were down. I cried. Not like in movies. No heroic tear rolling down a stoic cheek. I cried messy, catching hiccup breaths until Noob handed me a tissue like a gentleman and Chef took a dignified selfie with the hatch. Then we opened the door. Moon air is no air, but stepping onto the regolith felt like stepping into a mouth that forgot to breathe. My boots sank a centimeter and stopped, the dust holding me like memory. Gravity was a rumor someone told 2 steps ago. My body had to renegotiate every move. I became in agreement with physics I never read before. I looked up and the Earth hung there, obscene in its beauty, blue and white, and too much. Aya whispered, we did it, and the words dissolved into the suit. Noob bounded like a ball. Chef tried, realized Chef is Chef, and performed a small hop that would have been underwhelming on Earth, but on the moon became a haiku about humility. Sentinel stepped out, and his brackets brightened to a white that made shadows skulk away. And there it was, the door. Half buried in dust, a slab of dark like polished night. The words Lunar Door, excepting barely visible in the glare off my visor. It had not been in any map, nor in any science fiction I remembered reading that didn't involve teenagers finding weapons behind lockers. It shouldn't be here. But the merge rarely asked permission. Keys, Sentinel said. Aya handed me the tea bag like a relic. I held it up. The door drank the idea of it and warmed under my glove. The second key, my spare apartment key, glinted like a joke among gods and disappeared into the black. The third was the letter, creased from 1,000 rereads, the one my father had left in my toolbox when I left for the first job that felt like a calling instead of a job. He'd written, "If you ever go farther than I did, send me a picture of the sky there." I pressed it to the door. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the door sighed. It slid open with no sound, and every sound, like the absence of vacuum, has a voice, revealing a tunnel that went down but looked like it went forward, lined with hexagons that pulsed purple, then gold, the merge's favorite palette. On my HUD, a prompt appeared. Welcome, player. Complete the OBBY to unlock Lunar Archive. Noob squealed. It's an obby. On the moon. We are not doing an obstacle course in a vacuum, Aya said, which is exactly what someone says right before they do. The tunnel floor broke into platforms, each one barely big enough for a boot, drifting in microgravity. Between them, empty, down there, darker than any dark, with a hint that if you fell, you wouldn't stop at the center of the moon. You'd drop through memory. A timer blinked. 5 minutes. Rules have weight, Sentinel reminded us. And timers have teeth. I'll go first, I said, because I was the one who brought ghosts aboard, and because sometimes leadership is just a fancy word for guilt with boots. Jump. The first platform accepted me, tilted, corrected. Second. Third. The suit fought me gently, like it thought it was helping. My breaths fogged my visor edges and crescents. Noob followed, landing like he'd been born here. Chef approached each jump like a careful slice. Aya muttered friction coefficients like a spell. Sentinel didn't jump. He obeyed the idea of proximity. Halfway, the platforms began to drift, as if some lunar tide we didn't understand had arrived to exercise veto power. I reached, foot slipped, heart lurched, and a yellow sleeve grabbed my forearm. I got you, Noob said, grinning like sunlight in a place that had never seen any. Thank you, I said. It came out as gravel because gravity in my throat had turned traitor. We made the last jump together, boots thudding onto a final hexagon that felt different. Alive. The tunnel opened into a chamber with a ceiling that showed the earth without horizon, as if we looked up through the moon like it was glass. In the center stood a pedestal with a slot. The slot was the shape of a letter. My father's note had vanished into the door, but on the pedestal lay a new letter, paper crisp, addressed in his handwriting, for when you get here. My hands shook. I opened it. The ink didn't smudge in vacuum, because rules had weight here, and inside was one sentence. You don't send pictures home from there. You bring someone home to see it. Behind us, footsteps. Not ours. He walked in with my jawline and my mother's eyes and red bracket eyes glowing faintly like a compromise between myth and genetics. Me, Robloxed. The reflection I'd seen in the visor. He looked at the earth in the ceiling and then at me, and he smiled like a pause in music. Hi, he said. I've been trying to get your attention since the urban myth night. Everything on your side is too loud. Here, it's clean. Aya reached for her tool. Sentinel lifted a bracket. She stopped. Chef's spatula hovered like a ceremonial blade. Noob whispered, "Cool. What are you?" I asked, because humans think naming is control. Something you imagined long enough to make, he said. Something the merge decided had plot armor. And something that can help with what's next. What's next? Aya asked, and even her calm had edges now. He nodded at the pedestal. The chamber dimmed. The ceiling earth rotated and zoomed until the view settled on the night side of Poland, then our launch site, then the hangar. A second door, identical to the one here, gleamed under the floor. A timer appeared below it. It was counting down. Why is there a door back home? I asked. Because you opened this one, Sentinel said softly. Systems seek symmetry. And what happens when the timer hits 0? Aya said. The not me looked at me, apologetic. The archive opens. There will be guests. Guests, Noob said, delighted again. From the other archives, Sentinel finished. He pointed up at the ceiling at places around the earth that glowed. Deserts, oceans, city hearts. There are more than one. My radio crackled. Comms, faint through rock and rule. Lunar Flight 1. We are reading anomalous energy from your site. Are you seeing anything? Affirmative, Aya said, voice tight. We have initiated a protocol we did not know existed. Copy, Comms said, like someone whose map just turned into a poem. The not me stepped close enough that I could see the tiny pixel texture inside his skin, the same way ours has pores. He unfolded something from behind the pedestal. A flag. White, with a circle of red brackets and a blue square. Our logo since the merge project needed stationery and a joke that aged into an emblem. He handed it to me like a torch. You wanted to be the first, he said. Plant it. Make the story true in the loud world before the archive makes it true for you. Why us? I asked. Because you saved ghosts, he said, and grinned Noob wide. Because you kept the letter. Because you talked a Noob out of fist-bumping oxygen. We retraced the obby with our hearts pounding in our knees. At the top, the lunar air that wasn't air felt eager, like the moon had learned the meaning of audience. We climbed onto the dust. Earth watched. We planted the flag. It went in too easily, like the surface had been tilled by stories. The fabric didn't wave, no wind, but it moved anyway, as if the idea of wind had weight here too. No speech. Aya asked. I looked up at everything we'd ever called home. We came as players, I said. We leave as not done. The timer above Poland ticked louder in my ear like a second pulse. Noob took my hand. Chef took Aya's. Sentinel's brackets dimmed to a concentration glow. What happens when it opens? I asked the not me. He tilted his head. It depends on who's ready to walk through. Sometimes the boss comes first. Sometimes the neighbors. Sometimes a friend you didn't know you'd left behind. The ground vibrated, a slow bass you feel in molars and memory. The door behind us, our lunar door, brightened, the text shifting unstoppable. Unrated experience, open. From deep inside, something took a breath. Earth's door flashed like an eye-catching light. Com's voice broke into a dozen shards and came back whole. Lunar Flight 1. We need you too. Static ate the rest. The timer hit. 01. Then 00. Under our flag, shadow spilled. It oozed in no gravity the way ink dreams of moving. It pooled around our boots and then rose, assuming a shape that didn't decide if it was a person or an idea. A face emerged first. No, a mask. Not paper, not stone. The bracket face, but broader, red marks carved like comet scars. It looked past me at the earth, like a pilgrim at a shrine. Noob whispered, Boss? As if he couldn't help hoping. Sentinel stepped forward, brackets hot. Aya raised her arm. Chef took his spatula in both hands like a sword. My not me put a palm to my shoulder. It felt like electricity taught how to be kind. Remember, he said into my ear. Rules have weight, so do promises. The mask turned toward us, and something like laughter pressed against the vacuum and made it ring. It lifted a hand that was 10 hands layered 5 milliseconds apart and beckoned, slow, patient, inevitable. I squeezed Noob's hand back, swallowed fear like a pill, and took one step toward the thing that had just crossed into our footprint. As my boot lifted, the earth in the sky flashed. Once, twice. As doors around oceans and deserts and city hearts winked open like stars learning a new pattern. We had become the first to step onto the moon in a world where stories sign contracts with reality. And the next step, which I took because someone had to, was not down. It was forward, into a door we had opened by daring to tell it was real.